Welcome to the sentence structure section of the course, and in this video I'm going to focus on explaining to you, revealing to you the concept behind sentence structure and sentence structure questions. Now, there are many ways to make a sentence, and we're going to look at them in more detail throughout this section. But first I want you to don't think about sentences at all for a moment. I just want you to think about houses. There are houses everywhere you look where we live, but we don't spend a lot of time thinking about how they're built. We just see them as finished products. We don't think about all the workmanship, the craftsmanship that goes into them. We don't think about the beams, the timber that holds up the roof. We don't think about the scaffolding that was there as the house was built. We don't think about all the small but important details that went into building the house. In fact, how often do you even look at the different parts of a house? The doors, the windows, the roof, the walls. I'm going to guess that just like me, when you see a wall, you just say wall. But in this section, I'm going to ask you to look more closely than that, to look at how the wall is put together. And this will make sense in terms of sentence structure in a moment. But how often do you stop and look at, some of the bricks are different sizes. Some of the bricks are different colours. They're held together by this mortar substance. How often do you go really close and look at the detail of a wall? I'm sure the answer is never. And this is the problem with sentence structure. This is why sentence structure can be a difficult question. Just like we very rarely look at the details in a wall, we don't often look at the details in a text, in a passage. We don't look at how the phrases, the sentences are connected together, how they're held together, how they were constructed. A writer, just as a builder or a group of builders, bit by bit create a house, create a wall, so too the writer creates their passage, their written work, piece by piece, carefully putting them in for an effect, to have an effect on the reader. And in terms of sentence structure, what I'm talking about are things like a list. A writer can add a list in, or repetition, or parenthesis. And now, don't worry if some of these techniques, if the names are unfamiliar, I'll explain them in later videos. But for now, just realize that within any text you can find these techniques. You might find a rhetorical question that the writer has very carefully crafted and placed at the beginning, often right at the start of a passage. You might see a short sentence that's clearly shorter, 4 or 5 words long only, compared to the much longer sentences in the rest of the passage. You might see a dash and know that that's an important piece of punctuation and need to explain it. So this is how I want you to think from now on, is that for sentence structure, we're really looking at the detail. So that when you see a passage, it's no longer enough to look at the interesting words like we do in word choice or the imagery. We now need to look at how it's placed together, almost like Lego. There are choices made when we put sentences beside each other and phrases beside each other and punctuation. And we have to see why the writer made those choices, and we have to explain those choices. And this is why sentence structure is tricky, because it's an umbrella term. Bear with me. Umbrella terms are usually quite helpful, but I think in the National 5 exam, they actually create a trap that an awful lot of students fall into. So what do I mean by an umbrella term? Well, let me start with another example first. Car manufacturer. Do you see the words in red at the top of the screen? Car manufacturer is an umbrella term. Below the span of the umbrella, you can see there are lots of different car manufacturers. Ford, Vauxhall, Nissan, Skoda, Mercedes, Mazda, and there are many, many, many more. And I don't want to name every single one every time I want to talk about car manufacturers in general, because it would take me forever. So we have the umbrella term that encompasses all companies that make cars. So it's useful. Just as with sentence structure, we don't want to ask in a question, show how the writer uses either a list or repetition or a short sentence or parenthesis or a rhetorical question or a colon or an exclamation mark, and there are many more, because the question would be a ridiculous length. So we use the term sentence structure to say it's all of these things and more. It's all of these methods that the writer uses to construct the passage so that it has an effect on the reader. But it's dangerous, because sentence structure is not a technique. And if you get this idea out of this video, the rest of sentence structure should fall into place. I'm going to repeat it because it's so important. Sentence structure is not a technique. We never write about sentence structure. Sentence structure is the umbrella term. The techniques are underneath in black. List is a technique. Repetition is a technique. So for example, I can write an answer to a question that begins like this. The writer uses a list of issues too. And I can go on to explain what the list is doing. And that's good. I can write the writer uses parenthesis in line 12 if I'm talking about a passage. I can write that the writer uses a rhetorical question in line 2 to draw the reader's attention to the topic. Something like that. And in the SQA, when they see something like this, they're pleased. Yes, this is what we were hoping to hear. We accept that answer because you have identified a technique. This, by the way, is the SQA headquarters, just in case you have never heard of it. It's deep in the Highlands somewhere, and this picture was actually taken in the middle of the summer, in June, I believe. There's a permafrost over the SQA. And you have to make sure that you keep them happy. They're often in their headquarters listening out for sentences like this in your prelims and particularly in the May assessments. The writer uses sentence structure 2. And the alarm bells go off in the headquarters. They're sitting there and they're hearing hundreds, if not thousands, of these sentences every year. The alarms fire, the lights start flashing. They absolutely hate it. They say, please make it stop. Do not write. The writer uses sentence structure. You can never write this sentence. If you write this sentence, you're wrong. Straight away, and you're going to get 0 marks. So promise me, if you've ever written it in the past, you'll never write it again because you don't need it. It's extra writing. It doesn't help you answer the question. It just eats into your time. You can use all the other techniques within sentence structure though. You can write the writer uses a rhetorical question or the writer uses an exclamation mark and explain what it does. Just keep your wits about you. Keep your eyes and ears open for when you start to write this sentence. The writer uses sentence structure. Because if you write that, you're going to go down the wrong track and you're going to write a really general comment that won't get any marks at all. So, in this video we've learned that sentence structure is an umbrella term. It's not a technique. And it's really important that we realise that because these umbrella terms like sentence structure are slippery and dangerous, like this snake, because people start to use sentence structure as an answer when really what we should be focusing on is the techniques that exist, that phrase sentence structure is trying to describe a whole group of techniques. And we must make sure we use a technique from the group and not the label sentence structure. So, if you leave this video with that knowledge that sentence structure is not a technique, you will only ever need to see it in the question. If the question asks you, show how a writer uses sentence structure, that's fine. You know you can start talking about those techniques, but you never need to write that phrase in your answer. You can write anything you want, but I don't need to see when I'm marking your National 5 assessment, I don't need to see you write the phrase sentence structure. And that's basically it. Once you've grasped that, it's easy going from here. What I'll do is I'll go through each of the main sentence structure techniques, show you some examples, and show you how to answer those questions and get you some worksheets to get working on that as well. And I'll see you in the next video.